Sister Margaret is in the hospital with pneumonia. So what I thought I'd do is read some of her work. She writes wonderful stories. Her name is Margaret Foster Curtis, and she wrote what I'm going to read. It's called Family Reunion. Family Reunion. She wrote it on September the 22nd, 2001. Planning a family reunion. Have I lost my mind? Suppose nobody comes. Suppose nobody helps and everybody comes. But I really miss my cousins. All my life I've taken them for granted. When I was young, I was scared to death of most of them. I was grown before I found out that most of them were just humans. The big boys used to terrorize my group of girl cousins. They would drag us to the third floor and flush our long hair down the toilet while we screamed. If they got bored enough, they would go down in the lot and catch the ram, then bring him up in the yard with two big boys holding each horn and aiming at us. When they let it go, the ram would come charging across the yard at us while we screamed and ran trying to get in the house. Of course, we were primed first by tales of people getting trampled by goats and getting gored on their horns or butted silly if we bent over. So when they appeared with goat in hand, we were terrified. Bubblegum was very rare. Actually, it had just been invented. The big boys would show up chewing mightily, and we would beg for peace. They would extract mighty deed of homage before sharing their bubble gum, like finding them a piece of chocolate candy. Granny hid it all over the house, so we would have to look until we found them one, or kissing their grimy big toe. Then, after paying the homage, like kissing the toe, the generous one would take the piece he was chewing and half it with you. They gloried in doing things that we were not allowed to do. Tito would sit at the table and skeet chewed through food through his front teeth. They had belching contests after meals that actually did rattle the windows. And they would eat dirty. We had to wash. But then they were required to do things to get dirty that we were not required to do. They actually did field work on the tractor with the baling machine. They plowed and planted. I'm not sure they weren't rented out to the neighbors for farm work in addition to ours. They would come in so coated with dirt that we couldn't tell them apart. The girls, on the other hand, were not allowed to be out in the sun that long. We had to wear Granny and Sue's old straw hats just to go feed the chickens. They were hats that had started life as hats to wear to church. When they got too decrepit to be worn on decorous occasions, they were hung on the bullhorn hat rack in the back hall for wearing in the sun. They were pretty hilarious looking on little girls with buckets of chicken feed, hollering, chick, chick, chickie! We were also required to shell peas and butter beans. Our mamas seemed to think that this was fun. Everybody sat around with a lap full of newspapers and peas, laughing and talking and filling a pot with peas. The mamas went 90 miles an hour with peas flying from hand to pot in a steady stream. I can remember digging and digging into the side of that long, skinny pea, thinking I would never get any peas out. My sister says she wondered if she would be able to shell peas as fast as Mama. I sat there wondering if they would notice if I just slithered out of the room. Maybe I could go to the bathroom and never come back. But most of the time, nothing at all was required of us except that we not aggravate the grown-ups and behave at the table. As long as we were out of sight, we were out of mind. People lived in little houses all over the fields when I was very little, and I always assumed that they thought wherever we were, somebody was watching us. Nobody ever was. We did the most bizarre, dangerous things we could think of. Things I would die if I thought my children did. We could play all day in the deep woods without being called until mealtime. We could swim in the creek, which was over our heads in spots, had suckholes along the other bank, and big cousins who would sit on your head and hold you under. But nobody seemed worried about us and didn't believe us if we reported being drowned. We had a mean horse to ride or hitch to the buggy and drive. It was a wonder we weren't killed trying to ride her. We had a pony we rode bareback on, who when he got tired of the aggravation, just bucked us off and went to the barn. The horse was a tale in herself. She had once been a riding horse. I think Ike bought her cheap because she was lame. I think the lameness must have healed because we could gallop her full out with nary a stumble. Hitching her to the buggy was not as hard as riding her. Once you got the bit in her mouth, you could pretty well slide the buggy up behind her, hitch all the straps without her realizing what was going on. But to get on her back was something else. She tap danced and kicked the whole time the saddle and bridle were being placed. Then she did a tango or a mambo once she was dressed. She shimmied and shied away from the foot aimed at the stirrups. If you actually got your foot in the stirrups, she would turn around and bite you on the behind. If you tried to mount from the other direction, she kicked you. It took a brave girl to mount that horse, and that was only the beginning. She would gallop around the lot, ducking under branches to knock you off, scraping against fence posts and the side of the barn, slam on brakes to make you fall forward over her head. She knew all the tricks. The only cousins who I saw actually ride her were Bay and Miss Fanny, neither of whom were ever afraid of anything. Bay really wasn't afraid. Miss Fanny would be involved in a fantasy that she was riding National Velvet and just not notice that the horse was trying to kill her. She actually rode her the longest and the best, but the price was all the skin off the side of her leg. But oh, the buggy rides we took. We used to tell Granny we were going to get the mail and visit everybody in the neighborhood. We called on Charlotte Weston a few times, Mary Holt and little Amy, who wouldn't come out. I think they were afraid of horses, or maybe they were afraid of us. We rode around by the church and through Tuck Weston's yard and back around by Ike's. Eventually, we would get home with the mail. We often rode all around the big field and through the old church road, which was still faintly a road when we were little. Trying to get through it when we got to high school is a whole nother story. Sometimes we dressed up in the old clothes in the bathroom closet to go buggy riding. We fancied ourselves Southern belles in our corsets, long dresses, and big hats. We hoped nobody noticed that we were all barefooted underneath, because we could not get our big feet into the tiny shoes hidden away upstairs. Away we rode, holding on to our big hats, long skirts flapping over the buggy wheels. The neighbors probably secretly thought that Granny ran a circus, or maybe just a loony bin, when they saw us gallivanting around the countryside in a horse and buggy in somebody's old clothes. When we were budding teenagers, we rode to get the mail one morning and discovered The air base was full of young men. Thousands of them were pressed against the fence, hooting and hollering and waving at the buggy full of teenage girls. We got so excited at seeing all the boys, we spooked the horse, and she took off running toward Gadsden. This upset a mule in the parish's field, who took off running beside the horse. This upset the horse more, and she started shying and pitching and scared us to death. We were all yelling and screaming while Miss Fanny hung on to the reins for dear life. She got the horse stopped about at the church road, and then we had to turn around and ride back by all those boys. Most excitement we had all summer. Margaret Foster Curtis.